Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the New York State of AI and Quantum Semiconductors and Globally Competitive Cities. I'm going to be introducing Commissioner Hope Knight of Empire State Development, the state's economic development agency, and Mayor Ben Walsh, who is the mayor of Syracuse, where Micron is making an $100 billion investment over the next 20 years into a semiconductor fabrication facility. We're really excited to hear from both of them in today's panel. And I'll let you guys elaborate more through the questions. But first, Commissioner Knight, would love to hear from you. Can you give us an overview of the major initiatives the state is undertaking in AI, semiconductors, and quantum to ensure that New York remains a leader in the fields?
Yes, thank you. So, with respect to the state's innovation agenda for economic development, let me start with AI. We have our Empire AI initiative, a $400 million initiative that was announced last year, focused around a consortium of universities and academic institutions, really focused on using AI to solve key societal problems. This facility is going to be located at the University of Buffalo. We have a alpha phase in operation right now, and 85 researchers, institutions are actually working on solving problems. With respect to quantum, we have supported the IBM Quantum One system at RPI. It demonstrates New York's investment in quantum technology, and from Buffalo to the Brookhaven lab, we are working on advancing quantum technology in New York State. And then lastly, in semiconductors, where we have a very strong focus, we have Micron coming to Clay, New York, and the New York State Green Chips program, which really pairs nicely with the CHIPS and Science Act funding, was critical to bringing semiconductor investment to New York State. And we continue to invest in building out the ecosystem and supply chain for the industry.
Great, that's really helpful. So Mayor Walsh, would love to hear from you. Can you give us an overview of the status of the Micron project? And then I know Syracuse was also designated a semiconductor tech hub by the federal government. Would love to hear about that initiative as well.
Sure thing. So for those that aren't familiar with Syracuse, just to kind of get some geographic context, we're about 4 hours from New York City, and Clay is about 10 miles just north of the city. And so, as you mentioned, we have an incredible generational opportunity in the Micron investment, $100 billion, largest private investment in New York State history. And we'll get into the reasons why it ended up in Syracuse, but it's moving forward. As you can imagine, it has an extensive environmental review process, so they've committed to building 4 chip fab facilities. The first one is scheduled to be online in 2028, scheduled to be under construction in November of this year. So currently going through the environmental assessment process, shovels in the ground in November, first fab open in 28, second fab open in 29, and then the third and fourth will carry on thereafter. So just an incredible opportunity, excited to talk more about it. But as you mentioned, also designated tech hub, a project like this, Syracuse, as much as I want to, selfishly as the mayor of the city of Syracuse, we can't do it alone. This is going to require a regional approach, a regional infrastructure to maximize the moment of this investment. And so we applied to the Federal Tech Hub program. We partnered with Rochester and Buffalo, which is a new thing for us. We oftentimes would compare ourselves to our peer upstate thruway communities, but we partnered with Rochester, Buffalo, Ithaca, and really brought together all of our assets and resources to support this semiconducting industry. We're focusing on developing workforce, of course, connecting our regional academic institutions for research, and also supply chain opportunities. Again, we can't handle all of the supply chain investments just in Syracuse and Clay and in Onondaga County. They're going to extend beyond that along the Thruway, and the Tech Hub program is really putting us in a position to partner with those other communities to create a regional infrastructure for this industry.
Super interesting. And in the same way that you partnered with other cities on the Tech Hub designation, my understanding is that the city and the state partnered extensively in the process of winning Micron over to come to New York. Micron could have gone anywhere in the nation. Can you chat a little bit more about how you two worked together to win Micron over and why they ultimately decided to come to Syracuse and Clay?
So I think there was extraordinary collaboration. You know, Mayor Walsh, the county executive, at the regional, local level, Senator Schumer at the federal level and with the state, and then we had local community-based organizations very involved in getting Micron to Clay. You know, it starts with a site. This notion of bringing semiconductor manufacturing to New York State has been around for a long time. So in the late 90s, this Clay, New York site was designated as a potential site for a semiconductor facility. And over many administrations, both parties continue to invest. And I think it took this extraordinary collaboration to really get Micron to New York State. And, I'll finish with, so we had the CHIPS and Science Act that we knew was looming out there. That bill hadn't been passed, but Governor Hochul knew that in order to land one of the major semiconductor firms, we needed to have our own incentive program, which is the Green Chips program. So we actually passed that law before the CHIPS and Science Act was passed. And so I think that really gave us a significant competitive advantage in attracting Micron.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on that. So Hope really nailed it. It starts with the site. It's over 1,200 acres. It's a massive site. And to Hope's point, it had been in the works for a long time, but I think what was recognized more recently was that for the type of opportunity that we were pursuing, it needed to be much bigger. So initially it was hundreds of acres, and the county and County Executive McMahon specifically aggressively acquired more property to make sure that we could compete on a global scale for this investment. New York State Governor Hope and her team stepped up with green chips. It has to make economic sense. We had the Biden administration, the CHIPS and Science Act, which again, it wouldn't have happened without. So I think for me, one of the things that I like to point out is the alignment of political leadership. We were all aware of the division that occurs in many different places, but in New York and in Onondaga County and Syracuse, you had a governor, a county executive, a mayor, a federal government of different political persuasions working together towards a common cause, and we were able to show what we could do when we were all working together. For me, in Syracuse is the economic hub for the region, and so we were in a position where we wanted to show off the assets of the city. When we were courting Micron and they were coming to town, we were, no offense to Clay, we weren't taking them out to dinner in Clay. We were taking them to downtown Syracuse and putting them up at our historic Hotel Syracuse and showing off, our school system, our workforce development programs, and they needed to know that they were coming to a community in a city that other people would want to be in, and we were able to show that in Syracuse, so we're really proud of that.
I want to make one other point. We have something called the GoSemi Office, which is the Governor's Office of Semiconductor Expansion, Management, and Integration. It's the first office of its kind in the U.S., focused specifically on the semiconductor industry. And so this is the office that has really recruited the team to get to Clay, New York, but we're also working through helping execute this project. So kind of, end-to-end support.
Yeah, and I was just going to pick up on the point you made about Clay. For those of us who have not been to Syracuse or Clay, can you just paint a bit of a picture of what is Clay like today and what is its relationship to Syracuse?
Like a lot of suburban communities, it was for a long time a fairly rural community. As suburbanization and sprawl occurred, more of it became residential, but Clay literally doesn't have a village or a town center. So that is infrastructure that the county is working with Clay to begin to build out, but also we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to try to replace what already exists in the heart of our city. And so again, it's more about connecting the dots than again trying to create a new city 10 miles to the north. That means investing in transportation systems and other things to make sure that our communities work in tandem. But yeah, it's for all intents and purposes, it's a suburban community that is about to be turned upside down in many good ways, and in some ways that require additional work to ensure that we mitigate any potential negative impacts.
And how do people feel about it locally? We had a brief conversation about this before the panel, but I think it'd be really interesting for the crowd to hear about sort of the reaction that you've gotten to this, historic investment in the state and in the city.
So certainly a lot of excitement, myself included. But as we talked about, Syracuse, like a lot of older post-industrial northeastern cities, we are economically traumatized. And so there's a lot of people that are very skeptical, and understandably so. When you look at the history of our community and our economy and the manufacturers that we lost over the years, we often talk about it within the context of industrial revolutions and the first industrial revolution, we were growing, and then subsequently second and third, we began to go down. We think we are poised to grow in the fourth industrial revolution. But again, we've seen a lot of loss, we've seen a lot of disinvestment, so people have a healthy amount of skepticism. But what we're trying to do is acknowledge and accept that, but also encourage people, if they're not planning now for the impact, whether it's in terms of housing investments, investments in childcare, transportation, it's going to be too late. So it's challenging, but these are what we call the good problems to have.
Yeah, and maybe just to double click on that point. So my understanding is that the project does come with a community fund to ensure that the investments that are being made really benefit the entire region. Can both of you share a little bit on what you expect the impacts of the project to be, and how that community fund will actually be used to ensure that everyone benefits from Micron's presence?
So this $500 million community benefits fund was really put together to amplify the impact, the good, positive aspects of what's going to happen when Micron, gets its plan up and going. And so it's been a collaborative process with the community. We have had, touches with 300 community-based organizations. Over 12,000 individuals have given their input with respect to prioritization around things like housing, education, workforce development, and other community investments. And so, we really want the people that live in that community to benefit greatly from this investment.
Yeah, I just want to give Hope and her team and Governor Hochul a lot of credit on that front, because we acknowledge that this is requiring a lot of public investment, public subsidy. And as we make those investments, we want to make sure there's a return on those investments, and that goes beyond just the economic benefits of the project. And to New York State's credit, and frankly to Micron's credit, they've been a great partner, corporate partner, where our values really align, and they acknowledged, and the state acknowledged, that if we're going to make this investment, we need to make sure that we're getting tangible community benefits. There's a reason why it's called the green chips legislation and not just chips, because we recognize that semiconducting industry is very resource intensive, and so how can we use this subsidy as a way to mitigate the potential negative environmental impacts? And again, as we talked about, for as many exciting opportunities as there are also challenges that come with this investment. Again, things like childcare, like transportation, like housing. And this was a very forward-looking way to say, we're going to make an investment right now before our shovel is in the ground to invest in those areas so we can build our community's capacity to accommodate this massive investment. And
on the subject of housing, we are hosting this panel in the city with possibly one of the worst housing crises in the world right now. Would love to hear a little bit more about the housing landscape in Syracuse and the specific investments you're thinking about making in housing from the community fund.
Yeah, so this is something where, again, we couldn't do most of what we do without New York State. I think what's interesting about the convergence of traditional economic development and traditional kind of community development is that we're seeing, whether it's between Hope and her Empire State Development colleagues, coordinating more with the Office of Homes and Community Renewal, trying to break down our traditional systems for how we do this type of development and understand that it's all kind of inextricably connected. For the city of Syracuse, it's really been about investing in a lot of different types of housing. We know we need more quality, affordable housing, and so we're investing in that, and that comes in the form of utilizing the low-income housing tax credit deal for affordable rental housing, also using more newer, more innovative state programs like AHOP that are allowing us to build single-family, owner-occupied, also affordable housing, and then also capitalizing on the existing market and accommodating market rate housing as well. In an ideal world where all of our housing is some level of mixed income, again, the traditional programs and systems in place in government, locally, state, and federal aren't necessarily built to produce that, so we're kind of working our way through that, but we need all different types of housing, and it's really, more than anything, it's the quality. We have an older housing stock, and we're investing as fast as we can to try to, again, capitalize on this moment.
Yeah, so, we have begun to work on a housing strategy with our partners, local level, as well as our state partners that are focused on housing development. We're also working with jurisdictions and municipalities to help them think about what can, unlock the ability to build housing more quickly. Are there zoning interventions that can be made? Are there things that we can do at the state level? So we're trying to figure out how can we create the platform so that more housing can be built. And just like the mayor said, we need all sorts of housing, and we need to focus on how we get that built.
And the Go Semi office, so it was originally set up to kind of win the Micron deal. What is that office doing today? Are they getting involved in issues like housing policy, childcare, or what is the Go Semi's office focus?
So the Go Semi office is really focused right now on having Micron University execute its business plan around getting these fabs up. But, that involves many things. So right now, as the mayor talked about, the entitlement process is going on for the land, and the office is helping with that. Labor, training, workforce. 60% of the jobs at Micron do not require a college degree. They require some kind of training, 6 months to an associate's degree. And right now, we don't have the infrastructure to support that. So with GoSemi's help, we are building out our on-ramp program, which is a series of 4 workforce development facilities that will support advanced manufacturing training across the state, one in the Finger Lakes, one in Central New York, which will be the flagship, Mohawk Valley, and the Capital Region. And so we want to create the infrastructure so that we can get folks that are basically, in many cases on the sidelines to remove barriers, provide childcare and readiness support, mentoring, coaching, so that they can get through training and be able to access high-quality employment opportunities.
Interesting. And so we kind of talked about housing, labor. I want to circle back to childcare, but another ingredient in a project of this scale is clearly power. Would love to hear about sort of how you thought about powering up the existing site, and then more broadly, efforts the state's undertaking to power up future sites so that New York can continue to grow its semiconductor industry.
Yeah, so we are blessed with abundant natural resources in upstate New York. We have all the water that we need between the county water authority's primary supply in Lake Ontario, the city of Syracuse's supply in Skaneateles Lake, one of the Finger Lakes, and just a pristine, beautiful lake. So we have the water. The infrastructure is older in many cases, and so the resources are there, but it has required us to make significant investments in infrastructure. The county is actually looking to build a new intake or a new conduit line from Lake Ontario down into Onondaga County to create some redundancy in the system. I'm missing a ribbon cutting, or maybe it's a groundbreaking up there today for a new pump station. They're making significant investments in their sewer infrastructure. So again, the original infrastructure is in place, the resources are in place, but it is requiring us to really accelerate the investments and build our capacity in those areas. And also similar with power, one of the National Grid's largest substations in the region is right across from the site in Clay, but it's requiring them to make some investments there as well. But again, we're all aligned and committed to making the necessary investments to make sure the project happens.
When we're talking to companies, focused on the innovation sectors, the first question they have is, can I get access to massive amounts of power? And, what's happening is that we're needing to create, more power sources to support those opportunities. The governor convened a bunch of folks in September for an energy summit and really charging, government, industry, the utilities to think about how do we get more power, renewable power, across the state. And we've even begun talking about the possibility of nuclear as an option, because we need to get those power sources to really continue to create the innovation that we need in the state.
And I guess practically, when are we expecting for the first facility to come online? And I'm curious on the childcare front in particular, given that we touched on housing, labor, and the infrastructure, what types of programs do you expect to have in place to ensure that folks who work in the fab have adequate childcare support so that they can do their jobs?
So that's one of the first investments Micron made was in a piece of property to build their own child care center. So they're going to make sure that the needs of their employees are largely met. But again, it's given us an opportunity to look at our existing child care network in Syracuse and Onondaga County and to invest in it, identify those home-based child care programs, see how we can help build their capacity. And the county's been a great partner in that. But I want to circle back on workforce, because there are a couple specific programs that we have in place that aren't specific to Micron, but are building our capacity to be able to put people to work on this project and others, because part of the child care challenge is making sure that people have access to work as well. So we have a Syracuse Build Pathways to Apprenticeship program. Hope mentioned the construction training opportunities in on-ramp, and on-ramp is really going to be kind of the one-stop shop for us. But our Syracuse Build program is is prioritizing historically marginalized populations, communities of color, women, veterans, others that haven't traditionally been part of the construction field, and partnering with the trades unions, bringing them into a 12-week program where they're learning some basic skills and essentially being guaranteed an apprenticeship opportunity that then can lead them into a specific trade, which isn't just about a job, it's about a career. And that program's underway. We have our Syracuse Surge initiative where we're upskilling adult employees. We are opening up a new STEAM high school, brand new STEAM high school right in downtown Syracuse that will be available to both city district students as well as suburban district students. So, again, these are investments that we've been making for a number of years that now the challenge is to scale and to accelerate. But I think whether it's transportation, childcare, workforce, it has to be a holistic approach, and it has to be an approach that's about more than just Micron. It's really changing the way in which the community operates and positions ourselves for follow-on investment, hopefully beyond just Micron.
And I think that's a great segue. This panel has AI in the title. Sometimes we tend to talk about the state's semiconductor investments as separate from the state's AI investments, but the two are, of course, very much interrelated. So would love to hear a little bit more about the investments that the state is making in training up the AI workforce for the future and how they relate to the state semiconductor work.
Absolutely. We think they're, inextricably tied. We have a proposal right now in the budget called Harmony AI, which is focused on a couple of things. Providing high-quality AI training to underserved communities that are in college programs to support their learning in AI, providing support to small businesses so they can be able to use the tools to help upgrade their businesses with AI. And then we want to create a venture fund, particularly for upstate companies that don't necessarily get access to venture funding that are focused on AI.
Super interesting. And can you share with the crowd, what is the status of the AI ecosystem in New York today? I've been hearing a lot about how New York's trying to position itself as the capital of applied AI in particular, and maybe leave the model development to the West Coast. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it. So, one of the things that I did mention is that New York has the state-of-the-art R&D facility for semiconductor development in Albany, New York. It's called New York Creates Albany Nanotech Center. And a lot of the innovation around the high bandwidth memory chips, that innovation is happening there at New York Creates. And so we believe that's sort of the foundation for the AI industry. Those chips really power advanced AI systems. And so that's really what we're trying to build out.
And with Empire AI in particular, I know there's been a lot of excitement from the university ecosystem about being able to access those resources. Can you share with the crowd what's happened so far with Empire AI and where do you see it going in the future?
Absolutely. So there is, like I said, this alpha phase where there are, 200 researchers, 85 projects happening right now. And, the projects range from medical institutions looking to improve how AI helps them solve significant scientific problems. I know of a couple of universities that are looking at using AI to solve language and speech interventions for challenged children. Just a broad spectrum of significant issues that we encounter as a society, and looking for AI to help us solve some of those problems.
Great. And I know we only have a few minutes left, so I just wanted to ask both of you, there's probably a number of companies in the room who have a choice regarding where they locate. Some of them might be in New York today, some of them might be considering moving to New York. What is your pitch as to why, if you're an AI, semi, or quantum startup, or a larger company, why should you come to the state, and why should you come to upstate and the Syracuse region in particular?
I think, we have globally competitive incentive programs. We have a very diverse, highly talented workforce. We have world-class R&D assets. And I think, we talked about our Go Semi office, but we have folks beyond that that can really support one, locating their company here in New York State.
What about Syracuse in particular? Where do you see post-Micron, where do you hope these sectors, these interrelated sectors, will go?
Yeah, so I pick up where I left off. We're really building an ecosystem, and Micron is a transformational opportunity, but there are other opportunities, and in that ecosystem, I think you'll find, as you heard from Hope, that we have certainly the natural resources. We have the will and are willing to make strategic investments in those areas. I talked about kind of our industrial legacy and some of the negative aspects of that, but the reality is we're hungry, and we have a skilled workforce that wants to work and is willing to work hard, and we're also making investments at every level, from our very youngest school kids to adult learners to make sure that they have the skills to be competitive in the new economy. That's what our Syracuse Surge strategy is all about. And we've also, I think, really embraced more of an entrepreneurial approach to local government, where we are allowing ourselves to make strategic investments and take some risk and be willing to fail, but to fail fast and to pivot and to adjust. So it's an incredibly exciting time. You have communities that have had some hard times over the years, but are ready to turn the page. If you go to downtown Syracuse right now, you can see it all around you. The investment is obvious, but we really feel like we're still on the ground level of this transformation, and we would love for you all to be a part of it as it goes forward.
And just one last question. I know your term ends in 9 months, but projecting out, let's say, 10 years from now, can you paint a vision for us as to what Syracuse will look like? How is it going to be different than Syracuse today?
So after 9 months, I don't care what you all do. But over the next 9 months, we really want you to invest. No, I'm just kidding. Like I said, we're building an ecosystem. We are changing systems that are again intended to produce systemic change that will last far beyond my term. But again, I think when you look down the road, we have the benefit of learning from our mistakes. I think as we are finally in a position to grow again, we grew in the last census for the first time in 70 years. We know how to grow smarter now. We're making investments in our urban core, in our villages, in our existing town centers. So as we grow, we're going to grow in a much more sustainable way. Again, I just think that we are just scratching the surface of our potential, and now's the time to get in before it's too late. But it's exciting. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be around in 10 years, just I won't be mayor.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Really impressive to see how much the state has done and how much Syracuse has done to get on that growth path. And I hope everyone in the crowd learned from your experience.
Teamwork.
Thank you.
Thank you.